Well, here we are. It's chapter 4 already, and I can't believe we've made it this far. Hello all, I'm George, the Secretary of the Defenders of Australia Club. As always, if you've just tuned in and this is the first time you've heard my voice on this podcast, then do yourself a favour and stop this episode and go back to the start at chapter 1 so you follow along. As I assure you, some of the jokes that I make now and in the following episodes simply won't make sense. And who wants to tell jokes that nobody wants to laugh at, right? Oh, and be a mate, will you? Click on the like button on your way out so YouTube shares this podcast with more people. Last episode I mentioned I had something special coming. It's an interview with Adam, the club's treasurer. Now, I've known Adam for only a few months. Well, let me be more specific. I've known Adam online for only a few months, but I have met him twice. Once in Gundagai in 2025 for the club's world record-setting event, and again for this interview that's coming your way in the north of Sydney at a cafe. And that's the interview that I'll be sharing with you shortly. You know, after that interview, I wanted to know more about what other members' experiences were when it came to their first time seeing Land Rovers. So, I decided to speak to a couple of more members of our club, and those interviews will also be coming up later on in this episode. The other thing I mentioned was our house sit in the beautiful little heritage-listed cottage overlooking the Sydney Opera House. That's where we'll start chapter 4 of the Land Rover Diaries. The barman didn't seem at all confused as to why I had ordered 2 beers when I was clearly sitting alone at the Fortune of War, Sydney's oldest established hotel, which was first opened in 1828. I looked around at the freshly painted pub walls and noticed all the old photos framed and hung. Not all of them were pictures of Australia's young Anzacs posing before their long journey to some faraway place to fight a war. Some were pictures of old Sydney, taken back in a time when horses were the main source of travel. How amazing is this old pub, I thought to myself as I tried to imagine the young men, boys really, at 21 or even younger, coming to have one last drink here before boarding a ship. So many would have passed through here, but there was one in my mind I wish I could have met. His name was John Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick was born in England in 1892. He joined as a merchant marine when he was just 17 years old to see the world. What an adventure for this young man. How could he have known that in less than 6 years he would die on the battlefields of Gallipoli, and his name would forever be known in Australia's history. It was in Newcastle that he jumped ship and decided to go down to Sydney, leaving the merchant marine life for now, when he happened across the Fortune of War, right here where I am now. And he spent time meeting, chatting, drinking with fellow sailors. These were his people, but there was one difference. These sailors were going to war. The old pub he was drinking in was old even back then, and something about the customs and traditions of the military spoke to him. So he enlisted in the AIF, or the Australian Imperial Forces, on August the 25th, 1914, just after the beginning of World War I, under the name John Simpson. He ditched his last name Kirkpatrick and decided to use his middle name, Simpson, Private John Simpson. Now he joined the 3rd Field Ambulance as a stretcher bearer, and the very next year in 1915 he was off to the shores of Gallipoli. It was the HMAT Medic that took Simpson and his mates to Gallipoli on April the 25th, 1915. Simpson climbed into a small landing vessel, some would call a lifeboat, called the Divana, that landed him on the beaches of Gallipoli. Unknown to Simpson, the clock was now ticking, because in less than a month, he'd be dead. When I was researching this part of my story, I came across all the letters between John Simpson Kirkpatrick and his mother and his sister back in England. In all the letters they refer to him as Jack, and he signs off all his letters the same way. The Australian War Memorial has these letters and you can view them online. Thankfully, the original letters have been transcribed into text, making it easier for me to read, as I found it difficult to read the words that were so beautifully written in a style of calligraphy and cursive writing from back in the day. I want to share one of these letters, well, part of this letter, with you. It was the last letter written to him by his sister Annie. Now, for some context here, just weeks before the English papers had printed a large amount of stories complete with photos of Australians who had been injured and killed. These casualties were enormous and they shocked the English. John's mother had seen these papers but knew that her son would be safe. After all, he was part of the medical corps. So when her letters were not being responded to, she assumed that her son John, or Jack as she called him, was simply too busy dealing with the mass casualties coming from Gallipoli. Annie sent him the following letter. I've condensed it a little, but the full letter is available online for you to read together with all the other correspondence. Dear Jack, how are you keeping? Mother has not heard a word from you since reading of the landing of the Australians in the Dardanelles. Of course, I expect that you have had your hands full tending to the wounded, for I see in the papers have had a heavy list of killed and wounded. Oh, Jack, we do pray for you to be spared a safe return to us. There are a lot of Australian wounded from the Dardanelles in hospitals and gentlemen houses in the south of England. Some of these photos were in the Illustrated Chronicle, and my word, they did look fine and noble. If you let me know that you are receiving these letters all right, I'll send you a box of cigarettes and some nice chocolates. Oh, to have you home again. Home will not be complete again until you come back. Mother is lonely during the day, for I'm away between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Girls will soon be having to do all the men's work as all the young men are enlisting. The sooner they all enlist, the sooner the war will be over. Now, dear Jack, I will send you a few more lines again before the week is out, so hoping to hear from you soon, and with love and best wishes for your safety from Mum and myself. I remain your ever-loving sister, Annie. That letter was dated the 3rd of June, 1915. John Simpson had been shot on a quiet battlefield on May the 19th, 1915 by a machine gun while retrieving the body of a young Australian soldier that he had secured on the back of a donkey and was walking back to the trenches. By the time Annie's letter had reached the front, Simpson had been killed 29 days earlier. Simpson was 22 years old. Back in the little bar, I sipped my beer as I read about his short life quietly. He was once here. He stood here or sat here somewhere under the same roof, drinking, chatting, laughing in the prime of his youth. I looked at the second beer I ordered, and I drank to his memory and that of the 8,700 young men, boys, in the prime of their lives that never returned in 1915. And with that, I left the fortune of war, and I've never been back since. Now, on a lighter note, as I promised, I've taken time to catch up with Adam Cole. Adam is the treasurer of the Defenders of Australia Club. I met him in Hornsby, north of Sydney, just after midday, where he took time out of his busy work day to sit with me and have a coffee. I began by asking Adam if he could recall the first time he consciously noticed a Land Rover.
So I suppose the first time I noticed Land Rovers was really noticed them. You see them on the streets and you see them around the place, but the first one I really noticed was it was actually I think it was in 1989 when they actually did the Camel Trophy through Indonesia. I remember seeing that on the TV, and watching it.
There were 2 Camel Trophy events held in Indonesia around the time that Adam mentions. The first one was in Borneo 1985 that covered 1,000 miles between Samarinda and Balikpapan. The second one was held in 1988 in Sulawesi. That saw teams come from all over for the most challenging terrain as they crossed 1,300 miles.
So it really drew my interest.
Did you know it was the Camel Trophy? At that time, did you know it was the Camel Trophy?
I didn't know the Camel Trophy existed. I sort of, just remember seeing it on the TV thinking, this is cool. This is like, you know what I mean?
What was it about it that was cool?
Just the adventure, like just how everyone came together, and it was the mateship, it was the friendship, but it was also...
As Adam and I began to talk about the first Camel Trophy event that he watched all those years ago, I noticed a look on his face, an expression. How do I describe it? It was a smile, but not a smile simply indicating happiness, but almost like he could see his younger self and reliving that wonder of seeing those amazing old Land Rovers for the first time. How they were taking on everything that nature could dish out and wishing that he could one day be part of it. He was 14 years old back in the day, and I can just imagine him sitting there in his family living room watching this epic four-wheel drive event on an old television. Young Adam was hooked. So I had to ask him the following question.
If the 1986 Camel Trophy was happening when you were at the age that you are now, and there was a possibility for you to enter it, would you have gone on it? Would you have tried?
100%. I would have done anything possible to at least get my name down in that list, on that short list. Yeah. The Camel Trophy's in my blood. I think, most definitely. I think watching that Camel Trophy led me to buy my first Land Rover. My first ever car was a Land Rover. I had a 1969 Series 2A long wheelbase.
Wow.
So that was my first ever.
Adam went on to tell me that he couldn't quite remember whatever happened to that first Land Rover that he bought, but he thinks he sold it to buy a more family-friendly car, as at some point he met a girl that he started dating and decided the rough, rugged, go-anywhere beast he owned needed to make way for a more family-friendly car, as his life was now moving into the next stage, becoming a family man. I find it so interesting that watching something like the Camel Trophy could move someone so much that it could influence the purchase of their very first car. And this wasn't the first time I've heard of it happening, because it happened to me personally. You see, I was a huge fan of the legendary Bush Tucker man who also drove a Land Rover. There was something about watching Les Hiddens exploring the country far and wide in his Land Rover that captured me. What exactly that was escapes me right now, but it worked. So what was it about the Camel Trophy that the 14-year-old Adam Cole observed on TV back in the day that signed the deal for him?
No specifics event as such, but what I do remember is in the extreme challenging positions. The Camel Trophy would leave. It'd go from like a single person trying to compete and trying to win the event into like a team to try to get all 20 cars through. So it sort of transitioned more into one big group where we all tried to get through together. And I just liked how the mateship and the sort of the friendship that these guys developed. I mean, keep in mind they're from all over the world, so they didn't know each other before the event. So it was just, I thought it was cool that Land Rovers had the ability to bring these like-minded people together in an awesome event.
Spoiler alert. For those of you who follow the Defenders of Australia Club website or Facebook page, you'll already be aware of what's coming our way in 2027. Our club will be following the wheel tracks of the original 1986 Camel Trophy trek held in Australia 40 years ago. Departing from Port Douglas as the original teams did 4 decades ago, our club will be taking 20 teams plus an army of support vehicles complete with mechanics, caterers and medics on an epic 1,900 kilometre adventure of a lifetime. 20 Land Rovers with 2-man teams from all over Australia will come together on a cross-country rally that will cross some of the most spectacular scenic parts of northern Australia. From miles of dirt roads, weaving through vast outback landscapes, complete with river crossings, rock climbing, caking everyone in mud and dust on a once-in-a-lifetime experience. If you're only just hearing about this right now, don't worry, you haven't missed out. Team nomination and entry criteria will be released soon, so you might be one of the teams chosen. Like any huge adventure, mission planning is the most critical part of any event this big, and you'll never guess who the mission planner is. Let me give you a hint. He was 14 years old when he watched his first Camel Trophy event on a TV back in 1989. Yep, Adam Cole will be departing on his first site survey, as he calls it, to physically map and drive each and every track across every creek, visiting every cattle station that the teams will camp at, and bring back those valuable details for our 2027 event. If you don't believe in fairy tales, you should. I can't imagine how it must feel for Adam, who spent decades dreaming and wishing he could have been part of something so epic, to being the very person tracing the tracks once blazed by the teams of 1986. So, how does it feel to be that person? I had to ask him.
How did it feel knowing that you were taking on that responsibility from the 14-year-old kid that had watched that Camel Trophy in Indonesia on television way back then to now? You're the lead on this. I mean, how did it?
It just sort of fell into place. I don't think I put my hand up for it because I remembered back then when I was 14 what sort of like inspired me so much to get my first Land Rover. It's almost a part of me that I sort of forgot. But it certainly has grown in me, and yeah, it's an amazing honour to be putting this map together for this event that we're doing in 27. So I can't wait. It's going to be amazing.
Are you in any way? Is it daunting to you, or is the sheer responsibility of you mapping out a pathway for 30 vehicles crossing a lot of unknown territory, and the fact that, you know, they're all relying on you? At the end of the day, this is your work it's going to make or break this event. Is it intimidating?
No, I don't think it's intimidating at all. You know, I do a lot of planning for trips, both my own personal trips and for club trips as well. I just see myself as planning a trip that I'm going on myself, but making sure there's enough space and enough sort of time to get the other vehicles through. But yeah, no, not daunting at all. I think this trip coordinator job of the Camel didn't just fall into my lap. I think I was really born to do this job. So
well, I was there when you were voted in.
Yeah,
I didn't want the job.
I didn't know the full gravity of how big this job would be. But yeah, every time I write an email or I get a response back or something like that, and it's not only me that's excited about this trip. It's everyone that I contact. So it's going to be an absolutely epic event.
I know it's too early to ask this next question, but if we could go back 3 months ago, when we tapped you on the shoulder as, guess what, Adam, you're the mission planner for this. You're doing the thing. If we could rewind 8-10 weeks ago, is there anything you would have done different to this point right now regarding your journey as the map maker and the mission maker? Is there
no,
anything?
I don't think so. I think everything's fell into place pretty well. Sort of thing. It's an area that I've never visited before, so in that respect, it is quite difficult to do the mapping. But I mean, yeah, just getting in touch with the sort of the different cattle stations and the different stations, they're all super accommodating, sort of thing. So, no, I'm happy with the planning so far. I think it's all working well. So,
once again, I catch that smile of Adam's I saw at the start of the interview with him. It's a smile that I've seen many times on the faces of the people planning epic camping trips or getaways. It's as if he can already smell the outback air and hear the chit-chat over the UHF radio of the many teams passing details up and down the line as they navigate difficult terrain. So many thoughts must race through his head as he factors everything from where every driver's mettle is going to be tested to the beautiful starry nights and the campfires keeping them warm. And it's right here that Adam takes the lead in our conversation and puts into words the very spirit of his plans, founded and rooted in the spirit of the Defenders of Australia Club and its members.
They love already their adventure. They've got the same sort of adventure spirit within them. So it just makes sense to me that you want to connect with the people. You want to connect with your tribe. So the other people that drive the car, that have the same sense of adventure you have. And for $30 a year, why wouldn't you join?
It's cheapest car club in Australia, I would
Yeah,
imagine,
definitely.
Give anyone else a run for their money.
I mean, just sort of come to one of our coffee meets or come to one of our sort of non-member events, and you can sort of see that the sort of the knowledge other members have, and the just even the ideas that you might want to put into your car. It's sort of it's a great little community to be part of.
It was that comment about being part of this community that brought me to my next question, or more accurately, an observation I and many members of the Defenders of Australia Club had made. Just some days ago, when a seemingly innocent question was asked on the Facebook page by a young woman called Jess. Now, it's not verbatim, but her question was something like this: are there any ladies who own Defenders in the club? It was just a simple question that could have gotten buried in the many messages and posts put up every few minutes on our Facebook page, but it didn't. The post took off with reply after reply. Members, female members, came out and responded, and it took us all by surprise. At the time of this recording, the club president, Matt Hubbard, informed us that 130 of our 350 plus members were all females, all owner-drivers of their own Defenders. That's a third of our club membership, and I, for one, had no idea that there were so many.
It turns out we've got 130 females who've registered their name and their car in the club. That's a third of our membership at the point of this recording, right? What are your thoughts on that when you discovered that? No, I didn't see it coming. But what was your thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a good idea. I think for females to be part of this club, to not only join in with the events the club's doing as a whole, but to give them their own little separate section for the club, their own little identity, and let them do female-only events is a fantastic idea, sort of thing. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more with what Matt's direction is on that. So I really hope the club can, in the sort of the future months or years, really have a strong female presence. I mean, who says that we need to, the guys need to drive these Defenders,
That's right. Who said adventure's only for the males anyway? I completely agree.
I think it would be fair to say that for many of us in society, it would seem odd that women would be interested in driving around in such a large, cumbersome, often problematic vehicle like a Land Rover. Some might even think that the very nature of going outdoors and venturing to parts of the country that offers little creature comforts, often wrought with danger, might turn most females away. Well, I've been on the road around Australia full time now with my wife Kylie, and although at first I doubted her ability to adapt to life on the road, I have to admit she's more outdoorsy than I am. Here I was thinking that men and women were so different when it comes to camping, travelling and exploring to the unknown wilderness of the outback. I'm happy to lay down underneath my car after a massive day of driving and simply sleep on a pair of old rolled up jeans for a pillow. Kylie wouldn't do that, and for good reason. Why should she? When she could sleep in a clean, dust-free, dirt-free, mud-free rooftop tent in clean linen without even a spider or a snake in sight. Her idea of stopping somewhere to enjoy a coffee or a slice of cake from out of our car fridge means pulling out our little fold-out table complete with 2 matching fold-out camping chairs. However, most guys, and me included, well, we grabbed that milk crate that we took from years ago from that corner store at the back that's now full of bottles of oils and cans of lubricant. We tip it upside down and use that as our fancy camping chair. And as for that slice of cake, well, us males tend to pull out that poorly wrapped alfoil thing at the bottom of our car fridge to take another bite of that 3-day-old barbecue sausage that we've been eating on and off between packets of salt and vinegar chips as we've been driving. 3-day-old sausages. But look, at least there's some onions in there somewhere. I mean, we're not complete heathens. Not completely, anyway. Women in the club is just what we need. They're better organisers than us men. Their attention to hygiene matches that of a medical clinic. And best of all, they just know where everything is. Now, that young woman, Jess, who posted that question weeks ago on our website, has stepped up and is now officially the club's LIDO, or Ladies in Defenders Officer. And good on you, Jess. You have the club's full support, or perhaps more accurately, the club needs your full support. From here, Adam and I said our goodbyes, and it was time for me to head off to my next catch-up with 2 other members.
Yeah, we'll just give you a call, let you know.
As I climbed into my car, I was chatting to Adam, who was parked next to me. I started my old Defender as I was asking him directions to the highway when we were rudely interrupted.
Yeah, we'll go.
Yep, my car stereo, that bloody CD that's stuck in there, kicked off again after the ignition. I've learnt to never say it can't get worse than this. Well, while in Newcastle, I finally took out my vengeance on that CD player by removing it altogether from the car. But I know zero about car stereos, and I tried aimlessly to find screws or bolts or pot rivets or anything that allows me to take this damn stereo out. I grew frustrated, and I simply took hold of it with both my hands, and I pulled as hard as I could. All that happened was the whole front panel, complete with volume and pause button, broke off. And now I can't even stop it or turn it down. So now I'm stuck with this damn song that always begins each time I start my car. As I said, you should never say it can't get worse than this. I arrived at Wyong shortly after my catch-up with Adam to now meet and interview Neil and Warwick, 2 amazing guys and regional ambassadors. This pair of mates spent a great deal of time exploring the whole area for interesting camping spots and 4-wheel drive tracks, and then they invite members of the Defenders of Australia Club to join them for a coffee or a picnic on one of their many coffee catch-up days. How do I describe these 2 characters? Let's start with Warwick, who's seated next to me at this cafe that we've met at called Duck Duck. He'd be in his mid-70s, I guess, and there's not an inch of fat on him. He's clearly worked very hard all his life, and he looks like the kind of guy who's always lived on the land. As I get chatting to him, I get the sense that this is the kind of guy who can really build things or engineer his way out of any problem. His hands look like that of a mountain man. They're big and strong, and I'd imagine he's cut down a few trees in his lifetime. When I first saw him at the cafe, I actually thought he was a mechanic taking a break from his day and enjoying a coffee. I can see why he's attracted to Land Rovers, as it gives him a chance to exercise his superpower on anything mechanical. Sitting across from me is Neil. What a funny guy this guy is. Clearly from the UK, as his accent is a dead giveaway. I'd place him in his mid-60s, but it's hard to tell because he's so full of smiles and laughter that his expression makes him look much younger than he really is. Neil is constantly making jokes about everything. The only time he's serious and not turning everything into a joke is when I place a microphone in front of him. Suddenly he's gone quiet and he physically moves back without realising it.
Okay, it's all right. Don't move away, mate. So, I'm just going to ask you guys a couple of questions. Really, it's going to be 2 or 3 questions.
I didn't touch her.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
I was just helping the sheep over the fence, Your Honour.
Did you catch that? Warwick began with the usual line of, "I didn't touch her." And not to be outdone, Neil looked at me and said, "I was just helping the sheep over the fence, Your Honour." I've complained in the past to Bill Martin, one of the producers of this show, about the quality of people that I have to interview. And as far as Bill's concerned, I'm a B-grade podcaster, and even that's being generous, he claims. So he encourages me just to make the best of it.
Warwick, I'm going to start with you. I want you, if you can go back for me, and I want to ask the question, when was the first time you recalled seeing a Land Rover, but not just seeing it, like when was the first time that you saw a Land Rover and the whole idea of being able to explore and see the outback, the spirit of the Land Rover? How old were you, and tell me your background on that.
It's pretty easy to come up with. It was 1964. I went to New Guinea. My sister was a teacher in New Guinea at an outpost, setting up a school, and my brother-in-law worked for the Department of Ag, and he'd set up training colleges for the natives to teach them how to grow stuff other than pigs and sweet potato. And flew into this place called Kargwa from Mount Hagen as a sack of potatoes because the pilot knew my sister, and landed. And but what I noticed was the missionaries and the Department of Ag were supplying new vehicles, and the new vehicles weren't Land Rovers, and they were Toyotas. And I saw that then as 16 or 17, as treason. I saw it as a version of treason not to have Land Rovers. So I was indoctrinated into the Pommy Land Rover. I always loved Pommy cars. So that was my first time I knew I was passionate about Land Rovers.
The rivalry between Land Rover and Toyota owners has been there for ages, and I knew that. But I didn't realise that it goes as far back as the mid-60s. That rivalry was alive and well and brewing in the hearts and minds of so many. This whole podcast is about our journey around Australia in a 30-year-old Land Rover. And like Warwick and many of you listeners out there, I can handle most issues that this old 110 Land Rover throws my way when she wants to misbehave. However, in saying that, back home where our real life exists, my wife, she drives a Toyota, and so do my kids, and all for good reason. I'm too busy to be fixing 5 other Land Rovers. Toyotas just seem to be more reliable in the day-to-day operation of a city-based car.
My sons love Land Rovers, but they both drive Toyotas. But 2021, I bought a Range Rover Classic for $5,000. I spent $15 on it, and magnificent vehicle. It had everything new on it: new alternators, starter motors, extractors. It went like the showers of piss. It sounded orgasmic. I'd constantly wet myself just driving it. I just loved the sound of it, and everyone commented on the sound of it, and I think some of them were being sarcastic because of the bloody noise of it.
Warwick went on to tell me all the details about this Range Rover that he had bought and modified to a level worthy of an engineer with nothing but time on his hands. The car turned out to be a head-turning, heart-pounding, adrenaline-pumping machine and was customised to the smallest of details. As Warwick was telling me this part of the story, his mood suddenly changed, and that story took a whole other direction that I wasn't expecting.
I parked just up the road here, just outside Coles, nicked into Coles for 3 minutes, came out. Even though I'd locked it, it was gone. A guy doing a bushwalk up in the Wattigans took a photo of, he saw a burnt out Range Rover. Okay, just a burnt out Range Rover. Oh shit, that's an unusual rear bumper. I'll take a photo of that and I'll put it on Facebook. He put this photo on Facebook because it had swing out wheels on the rear end, on the rear bumper. And he put it on Facebook, and a mate of mine saw it and sent it to me. He said, "Hey, Wok, any chance this is your Range Rover?" Oh shit. I went up there, saw it. It had been pushed down into the bush off the track. I made a commitment to recover the vehicle. I got it up onto the road by a series of snatchems and driving another mate's Range Rover Classic. back along the track and pulling the dragging. Anyway, I got it back up onto the track and put it on a trailer, put wheels on it, put it on a trailer, took it over to work, parked it outside my factory bay as a burnt out Range Rover Classic. And I realised after about 4 weeks that I was losing my shit every time I walked past it. And I said, this thing has got to go. Why did I recover it? Why did I drag it back?
At this point, we took a pause and I stopped the recording as Warwick took a sip from his coffee cup. And then he told me off the record how completely devastated he was at seeing such a magnificent vehicle put together with so much love and attention to detail to be left as nothing more than a completely burnt out wreck, dumped like it was rubbish. It's one thing to steal a person's belongings, but it wasn't just theft. This was a statement made by some low-life unachiever in our society whose attitude is, if I can't have anything this good, I'm not only going to be taking it from you, but when I'm done with it, no one will ever get to enjoy and admire it. It was a terrible thing to do, and words just don't come close to describing the injustice of it. There's a saying and it goes something like this: even the losers get lucky sometimes. Well, the luck for this loser who stole Warwick's car is he got away with it. Because I can assure you that if this mountain man, even in his mid-70s, ever finds you, you'll wish you stayed in that car when you torched it. Soon enough, the voice recorder was back on and Warwick went on to tell me about the next Land Rover that he purchased. It was a super upgraded 130 extra cab, formerly a telecom mobile field technician's workshop. The owner had passed away and now his son was selling it. And in Warwick's words, it was the car he'd always dreamed of owning.
So I've got this vehicle that I absolutely adore, 130, 1997 130. It's a ex-telecom vehicle. It has an extra, 250 mil of cab, so the seat can go right back. I can stretch out.
As I quietly listened to Warwick tell me all about his 130 Land Rover, I saw that smile again. The smile Adam Cole wore on his face earlier on when we talked about his connection to Land Rovers and his unmovable position when it comes to them. I've long searched for a way to put in words what it is exactly about these passionate Land Rover owners that connect them to this car. And just then, Warwick wraps up his interview perfectly as he finds the words to explain this connection that I've struggled to find for so many years.
It's like a disease, but it hasn't been. There's nothing to inoculate against it, and we love being riddled with this disease. I'm passionate about landies, particularly defenders, and I want to try and get that passion. Play it like a bloody violin, and try and get have some really exciting times with a lovely bunch of guys that are all on the bloody same weird wavelength. And yeah.
We sat there in silence after that statement because Warwick was so right. In months to come, my problem-free 30-year-old Defender, known as the busted-ass Land Rover, would blow a head gasket in the middle of nowhere, leaving us on the side of the road 3 hours south of Alice Springs. Kylie and I had enough money to walk away from this old girl and buy ourselves a new one. But something just took any talk of that subject off the table. No way would we replace our Defender. We simply had to repair. Repair, not replace. It's just as Warwick said, it's a disease and there's no inoculation for it. Sitting there quietly trying to make himself look as small as possible was Neil. It was his turn next. His body language screamed of, I don't want to do this. But he did, and in the typical Neil style, he had to turn everything into a big joke.
I think I've already had the comment that I should be tarred and feathered for what I say about Land Rovers, but I love them. And what I like about it is the more we rubbish them, the cheaper it makes them for everybody else. If we get that message out there that they are rubbish, you know, they leak oil, they're unreliable and all that, no one wants them. We can pick them up cheap and we can live our lives to the greatest potential ever. One of the things I learned early on, and, you know, this came from my brother, that Land Rover conquered the world. You know, you see all the videos of them everywhere in the world, and in fact there was it was said, you know, very early on, there is nowhere in the world that you couldn't get to with a Land Rover. So, you know, when you see the videos, that's very true. If you want to come back though, take a Toyota. You know, but that's the tyre and feathering should start right there. But
I just knew this was how our conversation was going to start. Not just start with jokes, but end with them too, as Neil enjoys bringing laughter to all those around him. We met in Gundagai in late 2025 when the club was attempting to set a world record with a huge number of Land Rovers in convoy over a distance of about 40 kilometres. Neil and his wife Kelly camped next to me at the showgrounds, and I still recall the first time I met them. You see, Radio ABC had called our president Matt Hubbard in hopes of doing a live on-air interview about this record-setting event. However, Matt was unwell with a terrible case of the flu. He couldn't do the interview and was desperately seeking someone to step up and take the 9 a.m. phone call that was going to go live to air. I'd only just become the club secretary, and to be honest, I had no idea what to say, as I didn't know any details about the activities and events that others had spent months and months preparing. But since I was the closest person in the ranks to a spokesperson and a B-grade podcaster, I had the job. So, at 9 a.m. sharp, as I spoke to the host of the breakfast show live on air, everyone camping near me came over to listen as I rested my phone on the bonnet of my Defender and I spoke to the ABC through the loudspeaker so everyone could hear it. And I was asked one of the same questions I ask everyone today. What hooked you in about Land Rovers? My answer was what made Neil step forward and pull his phone out of his pocket and record it and share the video live on our club page. It would cement me in the history books as the club's #1 PR man. How did I answer the ABC's question live on air? Well, I replied the following. Oh, well, I first fell in love with Land Rover after the first landing on the moon, because the lunar rover is actually a Land Rover. I was a kid when I first saw the lunar rover, and when Land Rover said they can go anywhere, well, one's now on the moon, so beat that, Toyota. I went on to say that the lunar rover isn't working now as it's lost all its engine oil, and that we're raising money to send a mechanic up there soon. As I said those words, I saw the look of horror in everyone's face around me, except for Neil. His boyish smile and his thumbs up told me I was going to get away with it, and I did. The ABC journalist believed me, and the interview just continued to the next question. Neil and I have become great mates from that day, and I did warn him that someday soon I'd be interviewing him. So let's get back to it.
You're originally from the UK, so
I am.
Tell me the story. Where were you born and how did you end up here?
Well, I was born in East London and met an Australian girl who was on a 3-year holiday over in, working holiday over in Europe, and she needed someone to carry her bags back. And I obliged and came back with her in 1990, and we got married here. We're still married 35 years later, and the rest is history, as they say. So, loved the country. Came over on a 1-year working holiday visa, and bought a combi van, went travelling.
How old were you when you told me this? So how old were you and Kelly when you guys did the combi van thing around Australia?
25, 26, I think.
So what year are we talking about?
1990.
Oh, 1990. I beg your pardon. Right,
So,
1990.
I'm only a young bloke,
Dude,
63.
that's a real hippie experience. How long were you on the road for?
About 9 months. We often joke now that, when we talk about going on a road trip, and we love our road trips, we go out Cameron Corner and, love the remote kind of just bush travel, red dirt, blue skies. The list of things that you take these days, UHF radios, you make sure you got water, obviously, all the safety things and everything else. And, you wind the clock back to 1990 and I bought a combi van that was running on 3 cylinders, put a new motor in it, and then we took off for 9 months. We didn't even have, there were no dual battery systems or anything like that, and we made it up as we went.
Tell me about the first Land Rover, the moment that you acknowledged what you were looking at and the value of it, as far as the whole spirit of exploring and travelling.
I remember my brother. So 3 boys. I'm the youngest of 3. The middle brother bought a Land Rover, an ex-army Land Rover. It was a Series 2, I think, a lightweight. They were selling them pretty cheap. And this would have been late 70s, I think.
In the UK?
In the UK, in London. Yeah, you just work on it in the street, and there was, terraced houses, as they still do these days. It's funny watching YouTube videos and everyone's working on their cars in the street, but that's the way it is, in between rain showers, obviously. But he bought an ex-army Land Rover, and I remember thinking, my God, this thing's like Meccano. It was lovely. We were all Meccano kids. We were all sort of loved tinkering with stuff, and I watched him take the 2.25 litre petrol engine out of it, and he actually converted it into a Rover V8. Right now, Rover V8s were just like phenomenal, and I think they've powered Land Rovers forever, but this thing was never designed for it. But you could get kits that actually do the conversion. So in small ways I helped him. He was much more mechanically minded than I was at the time, but I certainly learned from the brothers. And he got this Army Land Rover and rewired it, put the Rover V8 engine in it, and it was just an absolute weapon. I just could not believe how this thing went. From that moment on, I was definitely hooked in the Land Rover philosophy of it's just simple, effective engineering at the time, right? So, shame they rust away in the UK, but that made them cheap over there. Fast forward to coming to Australia, I just couldn't believe that you could have really 30-year-old vehicles here that with very, very little rust, if any. Ended up buying a Discovery 2. After the kids had grown up a bit and I had time for myself, bought a Discovery 2 off a friend of mine and absolutely loved it, piled some money into it, enjoyed some trips away, but I'd always loved the Defender, or the series as it was at the time, but and always looked at the military Land Rovers as simple, effective pieces of equipment, something that I could work on, something that I could enjoy. And eventually bought one. So I have a Parenti now. Absolutely adore it. It's as rough as guts, and some would say that's how it should stay.
When you think about that adventure, the Spirit of the Camel adventure, what is it about that expedition that drew you in? What is it that made you want to be part of it?
Oh, team. There's no I in team. The spirit of the Camel Trophy was always that there's vehicles with 2 people in it, and they're a team. But there's 10 vehicles, and that's a team. So if someone doesn't finish, no one finishes. And I think that's a great thing for camaraderie, and the spirit of adventure is about enjoying it together, and helping people.
And would you say, in a lesser extent, as an ambassador now, which you are, would you say in a great deal lesser comparable between the Camel, Spirit of the Camel event, and you as an ambassador putting together a Sunday trip out into the mountains to go and do a sausage sizzle? It's just one of your things that you as an ambassador decide to put a post out there, get a few members who might want to come along. We're going to go and have a barbecue or have coffee, whatever. But somewhere remote. Would you agree that the same spirit and camaraderie that's drawn you into the Spirit of the Camel event do you agree that you'll find it in that week, no, that Sunday when you nick off to go and have coffee or?
Oh yeah, I think any catch up when you talk the rubbish that we do about Land Rovers, we rubbish them, and we enjoy the rubbishing them. Well, I do anyway. I mean, I think I've already had the comment that I should be tarred and feathered for what I say about Land Rovers, but I love them.
And with that simple finish, it brings us to the end of Chapter 4 of the Land Rover Diaries. Like I said at the start of this chapter, if you enjoy what you're listening to, then simply hit the like button so more people can find us. The Land Rover Diaries were brought to you by the Defenders of Australia Club, the fastest growing club with $30 annual membership, giving you access to a huge variety of events, people and knowledge all over Australia that's all about Defenders. You can find us on Facebook by searching Defenders of Australia Club, and likewise on the internet to get to our webpage. As always, a big thank you to our club's editor, Liz Martin, who produces our monthly newsletter. Without members' contributions, Liz can't make this newsletter, so if you've got a story or photos of a camping trip and you'd like to share them with us all, then please reach out and message Liz. I want to thank the 3 amazing pals who took time to sit for their interviews and tell me their stories: Adam, Neil and Warwick. Speaking about Warwick, during his interview I mentioned a saying when he was talking about the theft of his Range Rover. The saying is, even the losers get lucky sometimes. I use that saying in a negative way during the story, but I think we should perhaps read that saying in the positive. Let me explain as I finish up. In this episode, I spoke about the last drink I had at the Fortune of War right at the beginning of the episode, and told the story of Simpson and his donkey. Simpson lost his life at 22. Adam went on to tell me about his first Land Rover and how he had to sell it to buy a family car. That's also a loss. And finally, Warwick, who had his Range Rover stolen and destroyed. He too lost something. But Simpson and his donkey went on to be remembered in Australia's history books, becoming something most of us will never become, and that's a legend. Adam went on to be a family man, and now his life is moved to the next chapter, just like Neil. Adam bought a Land Rover and he drives it every day. And Warwick, who endured months of anger seeing what was done to his car, went on to purchase something he loves even more, a 300 TDI extra cab. In life, we all go through stages of being losers, but even the losers get lucky sometimes.
Baby, even the loser get lucky sometimes. Even the loser a little bit of pride. Yeah, they get lucky sometimes. Yeah, well, even the loser get lucky sometimes. Even the loser keep a little bit of pride. Yeah, they get lucky sometimes. Even the loser, they get lucky sometimes.